Hi there, I'm Megan from emergingcoherence.com, and today I'm going to do a video about self-love, because self-love is really the catalyst for all healing. And when I first became really hungry for healing and learning how to be a healer, I read a lot of books, like a lot of people do. And one of the first books that I read was Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. And I would come home from work after having worked a 12-hour graveyard shift, and normally I would have just taken a nap. But when I started reading Hands of Light, I just couldn't get enough of it, that I had to come home and I had to read this book for at least a couple hours before taking my usual nap. And I'm pretty sure I read this book twice in a row. That's how much I just couldn't get enough of it. And there were many things about this book that struck me and that really resonated with me. But there was one line or one small paragraph in the book that I haven't forgotten, even though I haven't read this book in several years at this point. And it just really struck me. And it's really simple, but it struck me very deeply. And so I'm going to read it for you here. And this is the book, Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. Okay. The basic malady I have found in all the people I've ever worked with is self-hatred. Self-hatred is, in my opinion, the basic inner illness in all of us. But just how that self-hatred and non-acceptance of the self manifests is shown in the different character structures. As we work to understand our dynamics on a daily level, we can learn to accept ourselves through this process. We can go through years of living by God's will, the God within, by the truth, and by love. These are all steps to self-realization. But until we can love unconditionally, we are not yet home. This means starting with the self. We can love ourselves unconditionally even though we see our shortcomings. Can we forgive ourselves when we make a mess of things? Can we, after making a mess, get right up and say, well, I'll have to learn from that one. I am a woman or man of God. I realign myself with the light and keep going through whatever it takes to find my way back to my God self inside and home. Okay? And the reason that I think this quote struck me so deeply is that I had been really stuck in this place of believing that I was fundamentally bad and flawed, and that my essence was bad and there was nothing I could do about it to change it. It's a really devastating place to be. But you know what? I learned a lot from being in that belief system, because there really were many hard truths that I needed to face about myself. And while I may have stayed in that energy longer than I needed to, I truly considered that to be the beginning of my healing journey. Okay? And I know throughout, all my years of studying and trainings and whatnot, that I've come across many healers out there who express that they're just inspired to heal because they have so much love to share with the world. And that's beautiful, and I'm sure that is true, but it just wasn't quite my experience. And so when we think about love and self-love, we have to break down these definitions. So what is love? And basically, the definition that resonates the most with me is that love is to pay attention. It's to listen and to witness with a deep and reverent interest. It's the desire to see all of something. Okay? And so if you attribute that to self-love, it's self-love, therefore, must be when you're able to witness yourself and to see all of yourself. And sometimes what we see isn't always pretty. Okay? It's often sometimes we don't want to see, but we must if we are to really love ourselves. And so the problem with this comes from the fact that many people assume that that's just the end, that it ends with this really ugly truth about yourself, and you stay there. And that's devastating. That leads to hopelessness, that leads to despair, all sorts of things that are not good for you or for anyone. But it doesn't actually end there. And this is one of the many reasons that I love theta healing so much, because it allows you to go deeper, to go underneath this heartbreaking discovery and really find gold, to find truth, wisdom, and compassion, okay? And more often than not, when we discover these aspects about ourselves, there's real beauty underneath it. Oftentimes we carry an attribute or a particular failure or shortcoming out of compassion, out of service to someone else, that our soul is operating from a different intention, from a different energy. And at the very least, there's always a good reason for it. Oftentimes we learn things at a very young age, and we acquire new beliefs and behaviors like a sponge, all right? And so as a practitioner, I'm really big on responsibility and honesty. And it's one of my favorite things when a client comes to me with a failure, a perceived failure, or a shortcoming, and then we are able to discover the real cause of it. Because that takes courage, and courage is beautiful. And more often than not, what is underneath this ugly thing is really quite amazing. Okay? So I want to encourage you to be honest, to take responsibility, because that is what real self-love is. Okay? And so I'll leave you with a little bit of theta healing. So if you'd like any of the following, you can simply say yes. Okay? So if you would like to know what it feels like to be courageous, and I know what it feels like to be brave, I know what it feels like and that I deserve to understand myself, and I know how to accept and honor my greatness, okay? You can say yes. And I'll go ahead and witness this now. Great. Okay, so that's all for now. Any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, and I will see you later.